Hello, good morning, everybody. I'm June Burgess. I'm the funding officer at GCVS. I'm just trying to set up my slides. Here we are. So we hope this session will inspire you with some new ideas about securing sustainable income to help meet your core costs. So many charities and voluntary groups are telling us that they're reviewing their fundraising plans because some of the more traditional sources of income are becoming very difficult to find, like grants, for example, and the competition is very fierce, or other more traditional ways of face-to-face fundraising has obviously been affected by the pandemic. So let's take this time to explore some more sustainable options, such as earned income. Now, this might mean a big change in approach to fundraising and charitable income for you, but this session will give you a chance to learn from others and to ask questions. There are many options to choose from, but our aim today is not to overwhelm you with information. Rather, we hope that one or two ideas might spark some interest with you, or might relate directly to your situation and inspire you to find out more. So think about those methods that might have the best fit for you within the capacity of your team, and those methods that align with your values and your cause. So this is not about adding more and more things to your workload. Instead, you should aim to do only a few things, but to do them really, really well. As a general guide, it's helpful to think about income generation more strategically. While we can't predict the future accurately, you should have some idea about where you want to go as an organization. So what are your goals and plans for the future? What would you like to achieve by this time next year, or perhaps in 3 years' time, all going well? And what will your activities and services look like by then? And obviously, how much money do you need to get there? So it's important to take some time aside to work through a fundraising audit with your team. So look at your finances. Where does your income currently come from? And how much have you secured from each type of fundraising or a different channel of income generation? Perhaps, are you more reliant on one type of income than any other? And then make a note of everything that might be useful for income generation. For example, your fundraising assets might include physical things like your facilities or your buildings or equipment. And then what are you good at? Think about the experience and expertise within your team. What makes your organization different? Is there a local need or market for specific products or services? And you might have some good external partnerships or contacts or high levels of support within your community. These can be great assets for income generation. At this stage, it's a good idea to carefully check your governing documents, for example, your written constitution, and make sure there are no restrictions there that would disqualify some methods of income generation from your plan. You might need to make some changes to accommodate some new ideas. And it's a good idea to have a mix of different income generation methods to promote sustainable, unrestricted funding. So your fundraising plan should not be too reliant on one type. And there's a few ideas here on the screen. Could you develop your intellectual assets, your experience and skills into providing training courses, or perhaps provide peer mentoring services for a fee or a donation? If you're involved in health and well-being, could you partner with the local medical professionals to deliver social prescribing programs? Perhaps your buildings or facilities and equipment could work better for you. Could you use them to generate income through hire or lease? If you already offer this, is it time to refresh your policies or adapt your space to meet today's market more effectively? And then try to make giving, individual giving quick and easy by using your social media sites or your website for fundraising. Promote regular individual giving among your supporters and make sure you capture gift aid. Could you provide products or services that people see are as essential, useful, or valuable in your community? So whatever methods you choose for income generation, it's important to focus on the difference all your activities and services will make for your cause. In marketing terms, this is your unique selling point. After all, your organization exists to bring about these differences, or to bring about a change and make this world a better place in some way. So this is where a strong and emotive case for support can be such a powerful fundraising tool. So make sure your internal and external messages focus on the difference you're making. Instead of asking people to support your organization, ask them to support this difference. You can do this by telling personal stories of change and by measuring and evaluating impact. So show your supporters, customers, and funders how they play a vital role in making this difference happen. Make them feel good about being involved with your work or your services. And then try to reach out to new audiences and invite them into your vision for change. So the past 2 years have changed so much for us all. For income generation, the pandemic has been a catalyst to drive innovation and change. So we hope that you'll find some inspiration this morning. And I believe I'm going to hand over to Roddy to take this forward. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, June. I'll just bear with me a second. I'll just get my slides set up there. Just while I'm doing that, I'll just to pick up on one thing that June said, which I wholly endorse, and that's the idea of income diversification. For those of you who don't know me, I'm with an organisation called CEIS, and we're a social enterprise support organisation based in Govan, but we work right across Glasgow, indeed right across Scotland. But from our own organisational experience, we're constantly looking at seeking to diversify income streams. One, it gives you more security. Two, actually gets you involved in some interesting areas as well, and it will contribute to the organisation's long-term sustainability. So I'm really glad that June mentioned that point. I'm going to be brief today. Later on this morning, I'll be talking about some of the support that CIS and other organisations can provide to you, particularly if you're looking at diversifying income streams and seeking to grow income through those channels. But right now, I'd just like to take a couple of seconds and give a brief sort of context and assessment of where we are at the moment and how that's going to influence the support that we think the sector will need moving forward. We're now, 18 months, maybe more now, since the pandemic arrived, and probably more crucially, the first lockdown took place at the end of March last year. We've seen society change, we've seen the impact of lockdown on the economy and individuals and organisations across all sectors. We've seen the impact on the NHS, we've seen furlough, we've seen economic slowdown, we've been through all that pain. Crucially for the sector, we've seen the challenges it's given many organisations in terms, one, of continuing to deliver their services, two, making sure that they could actually still generate income through the lockdown period. And ironically, in the context of what we're talking just now, many organisations who had large streams of trading or earned income, for want of a better term, struggled there, and sometimes the grant income in that time was more secure. So there's a little bit of a paradox there, but I think we now are at a point where we're seeing some light at the end of the tunnel. We've seen many organisations adapt in response to the pandemic, in particular lockdown. We've seen great things done in Glasgow and across Scotland in terms of food provision, meal provision, food distribution, support for individuals isolated in the pandemic through mental health and wellbeing services, even some other things like provision of bikes for key workers. The sector has responded in a tremendous way to the challenges of COVID. And we've seen to some extent the big government and local authority funds come. We've had welfare fund, supporting communities fund, community recovery funds, perhaps more recently, and more with a social enterprise queue, adapt and thrive. So we've seen these funds come and they were welcome, and I think they had a great impact. But now, as they're beginning to phase out, we do need to start thinking about where are these opportunities for income growth and income diversification for the sector. And again, in my the second session, I'll come on to talk about some of the practical supports that are out there. But one thing I'd like to, or just a couple of things I'd like to wrap up on, is huge efforts and huge impact in terms of people using digital. Now, that's one of these words that's bandied about at the moment, but it covers a million things. It covers what we're doing just now. We're having a session that in the past would have been done in a large meeting room, and we're now doing that digitally. But we've seen organisations seek to deliver services digital. We've seen organisations promoting what they do digitally. We've seen organisations actually earning and collecting income digitally through e-commerce and other avenues as well. So it's a huge area for the sector. It can be a little bit scary, but again, as I'll come on to mention in the second section, there is support out there for organisations who are interested in that. And my final point on this slide as well, and it's not really the focus for today, is we've got net zero. We have COP starting in a matter of days now, and we have the government will now be expecting organisations to describe how they are moving towards net zero when they bid for public contracts. We'll have funders starting to think about or ask the same kind of questions as well as part of funding applications. So again, that's another variable that's been thrown into the mix and something that the sector needs to be aware of and needs to address. So just to wrap up for this section, I mean, there is support out there. There are national programmes. Douglas Westwater, who will be joining us shortly, is going to talk about the Accelerate programme, which is for organisations who are on the cusp of trading, maybe just needing a little bit of support about how they move forward. There's other programmes like Just Enterprise, again, a national free to access government funded programme, which again I'll talk about in due course. And there's the local provision as well in Glasgow, GCVS. Student colleagues will explain about the support that they can offer. My own organisation, CEIS, and others as well can provide support for if you're looking to develop income streams and you're not quite sure how you assess an opportunity, calculate the financial impact, actually developing a plan to turn the idea into a practicality as well. So there are supports out there. I believe there's a guide that's being published alongside this session as well, which has links and contact details for a number of agencies as well. So I would encourage everyone as a follow-up to this session, again, engage, ask questions. If GCVS can help, if CEIS can help, if Douglas can help to Accelerate, we will reply, and we're here to support your endeavours. So that's me for just now. So
Yep, handing back to me, handing back to me, Roddy. Yep. Thank you very much. So that was by way of sort of setting the scene, getting you thinking about the sort of context that this session is sitting within. Just so you don't spend 3 hours today sitting listening to presentations and looking at PowerPoint, we thought we'd now do a quick icebreaker, rather like, as I said earlier, a speed dating event. You know, if I've done this in a room where we just moved around the room quickly and just introduced yourself to everybody, that was a bit too tricky online. So what we've actually done is Franny's got some breakout rooms together so that you can just pop into those rooms and do a quick introduction, the name, your organisation, and some highlight or story that you would like to share. As Roddy said, there's been so much positive work and developments that have come out of COVID. We thought it would be really nice for folk to have a chance to share with each other. But you've got sort of a couple of moments each, couple of minutes each to do that in the breakout rooms. So if that's okay with everybody, Fran will open up the breakout rooms and you should disappear into a breakout room. If not, there should be a button at the bottom of your screen to say join the breakout room, and we'll see you back in 10 minutes. Hello there, folks. Have we got everybody back? No, not quite yet. Just wait for the grooms to come back. Hopefully that was a quick introduction and a chance to say hello to a few folk. Couple of moments. That's it. That should be everybody appearing back. Good. Thanks. Welcome back, folks. That was by way of an opportunity to just get to see who's actually around on the call, and they're the groups you'll be in a little bit later, so it saved time a little bit later in the morning because you'll have already had a chance to say hello to each other when we go to the other breakouts. So we're moving on with the rest of the programme now, and it's my chance to introduce you. As I said, we were going to a speaker that we have today, Pasna Sallis, who's the founding director of the Weekday Wow Factor project. And if you haven't heard Pasna speak before, you're in for a treat. She's always so motivating and enthusiastic. No pressure, Pasna, now that I've told everybody that, but she's always really good. And if you're talking about partners to work with, I think it's great to know that there are folks out there in the sector, because it can be quite scary when you're starting to think about doing something different, and trading or, you know, that sort of thing can be really quite scary. So it's nice to hear the positive stories that of folk that have actually been there and done it and continuing to do that. So I think, Pasna, am I to do the video first? Is that right? You want me to show you video? Oh, if you unmute yourself. Can you unmute yourself?
I was just going to say, okay, why not? But maybe I'll just talk a wee bit first, and then if you don't mind putting the video on.
That's fine. You tell me when you want the video.
That would be great. Hello, everybody, and thank you, Sally, for inviting me to speak. It's a pleasure to be here and meet so many very interesting people. Yeah, most people I don't recognise, so it's lovely to meet you. Yeah, so I have worked in the NHS for 19 years as an occupational therapist, and during that time I noticed some gaps, particularly in the community when I was trying to signpost people to opportunities. Sadly, the list of things that I had for community resources, a lot of older people that I was working with were not interested in taking part. And through my work, I discovered two very powerful occupations, motivating factors. One was when I was working with people with dementia, two particular ladies who had advanced stages of their dementia. And one person was literally mute and she was living at home with her husband, and the other lady was only in her early 40s and she was in the care of the elderly ward setting. And yeah, her communication was severely affected as well. And what I discovered with both these ladies was that when music was played, there was much better eye contact, there was smiling going on, there was a complete transformation. They knew words to the songs, and I just found that quite mind-blowing. And you could see more of the person rather than the diagnosis of dementia. And at that time, I was looking for opportunities for these ladies to go to in the community. And all I could find was dance classes. And some of them may be regarded as being disruptive in a mainstream dance class, or they might not be able to follow instructions. So from my occupational therapy point of view, it needed to be freestyle. So people can get up and dance when they want, they can sit down when they want, and they can shout out, and it doesn't really matter. So the only thing that I could think of at the time were nightclubs, and 20 years ago when I was a student. So what I did was I approached some of my favourite nightclubs at that time, and I asked them if they could be a daytime kind of setting for a disco, for a freestyle disco for community members to engage in. And I was relieved to know that there was big interest from quite a lot of the different nightclubs. And then I was looking at it from an accessibility point of view. And with that hat on, I discovered one particular place which was almost like a bungalow, and it was near the art galleries. So it was on a central point. It was good bus links in Partick called the Santry nightclub. So that's where we started. I'm saying we, that's where I started. Yeah, so we started that. And at the same time, just back to the NHS again, there was a gentleman who didn't have dementia, but his family were very concerned because of his loneliness issue. They felt as if he was just going round the block walks all day, and he wasn't actually engaging with other people. So I was brought in just to see what I could do, and I had a long conversation with this gentleman, and he wasn't interested in any of the activities that were like standard from the NHS to give out to people. And then I randomly, my brain just went to something completely different, and I asked him about 10-pin bowling, and there was a glint in his eye, and that was it. I had to go 10-pin bowling with him, which wasn't the normal thing to do in my NHS work, but it was the only thing that showed a sign that he would be happy to engage in. So I'm looking for healthy occupations, obviously. And so we went along to the 10-pin bowling alley, and I just couldn't believe the transformation in this gentleman who had difficulty picking up things from the floor in his apartment to picking up the heavy 10-pin balls and going right down and making sure he gets as many strikes as he can. It was just mind-blowing. Yeah, it really was. And at that point, I also noticed there was a lot of empty lanes. And I was thinking, wow, there are so many other gentlemen and women who would really benefit, our community members benefit on using this resource that's lying empty during the weekday. So that's where the weekday part of Wow Factor came along. So it's like looking at the daytime economy, that my brain started to look out with the NHS at that point. And I was thinking, this is helping the 10-pin bowling alley that's empty during the day, and it's helping the community members as well with their health and well-being goals. So it was a win-win for both. So that was kind of like the turning point for my kind of thoughts. And I knew I wouldn't be able to pursue these activities within the NHS setting, and it had to be out with. So I had some very scary conversations with Brian from Firstport about social enterprises. I'd never heard of the term social enterprise. So it was like going to another, not another planet, but another universe, really. And I remember listening to him, not taking in any information whatsoever, and walking out and going, no way am I going there. It was just all these different models that I'd never heard of. It looked just really complicated. So yeah, but the drive and the passion and the needs and the gap just wouldn't leave me alone in my head. I could have easily just carried on with my NHS job, but it's just something there. So I had another meeting with Brian, really changed my mindset in tune so that I could learn some more, and I did. So on the first day of the disco, I got my children to make the posters because I have no skills whatsoever, and put them out on Byres Road and the surrounding areas. In my mind, I thought there would be about 50 people in a long queue coming into the disco. Nobody showed up. So we had zero, so starting from zero. And at that point, it really hit me like a ton of bricks that I have absolutely no business acumen whatsoever. Coming from the NHS, you're dealing with waiting lists, and all of a sudden you're trying to draw people in. I didn't realize how difficult it is without anyone knowing you. So at that point, I got in touch with Robert from Active Seniors in Knightswood, just because there was a flyer at the community centre with his phone number. So I phoned him and he connected me to Sunny Govan, and we got Cameron, the DJ, to come along and DJ for us, because I had no money, zero money at that point. and came along to volunteer, and he's still our DJ since this is October 2017 that we started, and he's still DJing for us. So a huge asset, Cameron is. And then, yeah, we got 2 fundings. We got the Firstport Startup Grant, and we got the School of Social Entrepreneur grant as well. And they were psychologically a major boost, starting from nothing. And then I just basically persevered over the years, developing the activities and running it all. Everything was done alone. It was a one-woman band with very limited skills. I'm very grateful for the startup program of the School of Social Entrepreneurs, where I was a student. So I learned a lot from there. And then I went on to the Trade Up program as well. So yeah, Sally, that's a lot of chat. Thank you for listening, but I've got more to say, but there's a wee break to give everybody a break about some of the activities pre-COVID that were taking place. Thanks, Sally, for sharing the video.
I don't have any sound on the video. The video's turned on, and there isn't any sound. I haven't been able to hear any sound on it.
Right, okay, that's all right. That's okay. I think people probably get the gist of the
Yes.
activities that we're doing. So we're doing zip sliding, and we've got the disco, of course. We do speed boating, we do rural walks. We've been up on chairlifts. This is our surfing trip to Wales. Yeah, so we do lots of exciting things. We're go-karting as well. So yeah, thank you for that, Sally.
Oh, sorry about the sound. I didn't know there was some. Anyway,
that's okay. And the pictures were extremely slow, but that's just the nature of things. Yes, I should have had a backup plan to have the video there. I might be able to do that just later if there's any time, but no worries at all if there's no time. Yeah. Thank you for that.
We can share the link, Pasna.
That's great. Yes, thank you. Yes, So it's a big variety of activities. We definitely don't do any bingo at Weekday Wow Factor, and we try to make things that are more active rather than passive sitting down activities where possible. In October time, normally we host a murder mystery lunch for Halloween at the House of the Art Lover. But because of COVID, at the moment, our numbers are so low, should I say, this year. We're planning to have one, but because of all the partnership organisations are not seeing older people face to face at the moment, that's led to us cancelling the event, sadly, but we felt as if we needed to try it anyway, just to see how it goes. And then the numbers of COVID have gone up. So yeah, so this is all pre-COVID that video was relating to. And then during COVID, what happened was, so sorry, just in regards to finances. So we were charging people, we were charging community members in our target group, our older adults who live in areas of deprivation. It obviously didn't sit right with me when the NHS services are free. So at that point, I also was kind of steered into social enterprise, and I didn't really know we could apply for charity, so charity status. So the beneficiaries were paying, which doesn't really sit well with the social enterprise model, because the beneficiaries should be getting things for free, and then the profit part should be yeah, like a cafe. I think Well Fed is a really good example, where the cafe is generating income and then the beneficiaries, the community groups, are getting things free. So I was like looking at that model and I was thinking, we're not a social enterprise. We should really be a charity and not a social enterprise. So I then discovered that you can apply for social enterprise. While you're a social enterprise, you can also have a charity arm, which was music to my ears, because we needed kind of both, really more charity. But during COVID, we had the most funding. So just to let you know, our accounts went down to £300. That's all we had. We had £300 pre-COVID, yeah, in our yearly accounts. So from that, we had a major boost of income, weirdly, during COVID. There was quite a lot of funding that we could apply for. And I think that was because we switched to Zoom immediately. So as soon as we had the COBRA meeting on the Friday, the 13th of March it was, when Boris Johnson mentioned the main people who were at risk were basically our client group. Older adults with complex conditions, so health conditions. So at that point, I was thinking plan B, and our clients still wanted to meet up in the disco on the Monday, and I had to make a decision, a professional decision, not to do that because people were at risk, and I had to have plan B. So the plan B was Skype. Does anyone use Skype? Everyone's heard of Skype. A lot of older adults had heard of Skype. They had previous accounts. And I was from the staff point of view, and basically, because people had heard of Skype just before that, we had a WhatsApp group. Very luckily, we had a pre-COVID WhatsApp group. So I asked people if they wanted to just be on video, just to do our St. Patrick's Day themed disco, which was supposed to be on the Monday, over WhatsApp. So only 4 devices can be used. So we used it, we did 2 sessions, went really well. Then we progressed on to Skype, worked really well, but the music was like a really awful radio station. Yeah, but the ladies didn't mind. They were more, they're interested in connecting with each other. They didn't care if the music was bad. And then I went to a SCVO digital meeting, and there I made connections with Leonard Cheshire, who had a digital expert called Jerry, and she for years has been helping community members use devices. So had reached out in the chat box, can someone help me? I'm doing this alone. And so Jerry assisted me and has got people in their 80s using the house phone to using Zoom. I just find that mind-blowing as well, just phenomenal. Partnership work is just incredible. Yeah, so we had a full array of programs, Zoom program going on, and the music was a million times better. We got that sorted. Then we had Tai Chi and other exercise classes, a full Monday to Friday program. Not everybody likes dancing. Some people like cycling. We used to go to Freeville North and use cycling there. Then I invested in getting some of these pedal exercisers. So we had these, we had YouTube videos, and we were pedaling around the world. We were in the Alps doing mountains, and we were just all over the world doing stuff. We were also doing walks. So we'd be standing up in front of our devices, and we would be going for a walk in Arizona or by the beach in Hawaii and stuff like that. And we'd be dancing in this position in our living rooms for the disco. So I think because of doing something differently and uniquely, I guess, we were attracting quite a lot of funding. The one fund that I want to talk about is the Adapt and Thrive. So I was applying for Adapt and Thrive funding for tutors, and kept getting knockbacks from that funding, to the point of first time I ever had tears in Weekday Wow Factor. But anyway, managed to get some more feedback to say that this is a good idea, but it's a good idea not to invest in the facilitators, the cost for that, but to actually to grow the business. And that was a huge learning, actually. I'm really glad for that feedback, because we now have 2 business development officers. We've got employees for the first time ever. So it's really exciting. And gosh, I'm filling up, I'm sorry. But yeah, it's just taken 4 years to get to this stage. But anyway, it's totally worth it. So we are hoping to expand our business. And just the chat from this morning about, going into the social enterprise realm and charging and using donations is all a good idea. I'm glad that I started from the point of social enterprise and not charity, because that transition would be more difficult. It'd be harder to ask our client group for money. At the moment, they're used to it. But one of the challenges, I'm sorry, I've been talking for ages. I'm so sorry. I'll just be 2 minutes. one of the big challenges from a kind of a working social enterprise startup person is, I'm not sure if I should mention the lottery, but anyway, the lottery, for example, they, for the Awards for All, they only prefer applications that are, that you don't charge at all. And it's really frustrating because you're not making a profit. You're just asking for a tiny bit of money contribution from people. So that's been quite challenging. It's just changing that word from like say a £5 for our activities a week to donation. And yeah, that's quite challenging because as soon as you put donation, people are not going to be contributing really. Some maybe, but most will not be inclined to. So that's my kind of biggest kind of challenge. Thank you so much for listening to me. I'm so sorry for speaking for so long. You should have stopped me.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks.
Pasna, thank you very much.
Thank you. Forget about the second video. Thanks.
Yeah, that was very kind of you. And Pasna's not running away, so we'll not stop for any questions and answers now. But I think the plan is that at the end of the morning, when Pasna's a member of the GSEN network anyway, so she's going to help Jennifer with the final session. If there's any questions that you'd like to ask Pasna specifically, then we can get that at the end of the morning. I was just struck by not only your enthusiasm, but all of the things you talked about that are useful for the rest of us, like drawing other people in and working with partners, and what a relief it is when you find somebody that can help you. So I think they're all things that we would all recognise. So thanks very much, Pasna. We'll move on to the next bit of the morning, which is to begin to think about what support might be available. So that was a lovely lead in from Pasna, really. It starts with myself. So got a presentation to tell you a little bit about the support that's available for organisations. In my own case, it's around GCVS. Some of the team are here today as well. With myself, you've already heard from June, and I want to tell you a little bit about the wider support for your organisations. Anybody that's based in Glasgow, the support that we can provide you. And then I'll hand over back to Roddy again, who mentioned that he'll tell you some more specifically around the social enterprise support. So just to share the PowerPoint, and there's no sound, so I'm fine with this one. It should work without any problem. There. So yeah, introducing myself, I'm Sally Condy, the Sector Development Manager at GCVS, and June's going to say a little bit about the funding that's available here more specifically. We're happy to support any voluntary sector groups, organisations and social enterprises in Glasgow. That's our remit. I know we have some colleagues here today from other TSIs, and we're always happy to sort of share ideas with them too. I've got a couple of slides to explain to you who the other partners are that are involved. If you've worked in the voluntary sector, you'll know that half the struggle is finding the right people to talk to. So GCVS ourselves, we're a key member of the third sector interface. Lots of abbreviations. Our particular role is a development agency, and as it says on our website, an advocate for voluntary sector organisations. Our other TSI partners, you've heard from Jennifer at GSEN already, and the third one is Volunteer Glasgow, and obviously they're the place to go for all of your volunteer support needs within the city. And if you haven't heard of the other organisation on my slide, they're worth looking into, the Glasgow Third Sector Interface Network. Some people may know Kathleen Caskey, the manager there. If you like, I like to think of the network as a network of networks. So it's all about finding the right people to speak to and working together. And it can be really difficult. So the GSEN, the Glasgow Third Sector Interface Network, consists of networks of networks. So for example, the Arts Network, the Equalities Network are members, and so on. So it can be a useful place to find other people to work with. In terms of actual support for your organisation, there are a number of organisations in Glasgow whose real remit is to provide that ongoing support. And I've listed all of the organisations there that come together to try and provide a shared programme that might be to help your organisations with things like funding and fundraising or governance, those types of activities, the things that all organisations need to actually think about. When we send out the details at the end, you'll have much more about the contact details and also what all these individual organisations do. Mostly it's web links. So I think I'd emphasise again what June said about taking a bit of time after the session to follow up and have a look at everybody to see who's useful for yourself. So to give you a little bit more detail about what support we actually have available, we like to think about the core things that every organisation might need, not necessarily about the service delivery, because you'll be experts on that, just as Pasna is an expert on the physical activity and movement and so on. That's not the sort of thing we would support with, but we're interested in supporting the core things that every organisation needs to run. And I've got a list of half a dozen or so to actually show you. So the first one is funding and fundraising. June, do you want to say a little bit briefly about that?
Yes, thank you, Sally. So obviously, if you go to our website, the GCVS website, and click on the tab supporting your organisation, you'll come to the funding tab. If you have a look at that page, you'll find a wide range of resources to support you in your fundraising activities. So we've got some free fundraising sessions. These are 2-hour sessions delivered by Zoom. We've got developing your fundraising plan coming up on the 2nd of November, and digital and online fundraising on the 22nd of November. So that's completely free of charge. So please, you can book your place from the website. We also have other free resources from the website. We've got 2 short videos, 11 minutes long. One of them is called Developing Your Fundraising Plan, and another one, Applying for Grants. So that really summarises all the key points you'll need for both of those activities in a short video. I also offer one-to-one funding surgeries. So if you're looking to have a chat with me about your particular circumstances, then we can offer that either by Zoom or telephone, and that's free. So please just contact me after this session. I also offer a free text review service. So if you're applying for grants and you just want somebody, an impartial, critical friend, to have a look at that before you submit it, then please contact me and let me know about that in advance. So don't phone me at 4 o'clock before the 5 o'clock deadline, but just give me a bit of notice and I'll be happy to help with that, just to help strengthen your bid. We also give funding news and updates in our weekly GCVS newsletter, and also there's funding updates in the sector development newsletter, which goes out once a fortnight. So all the latest news about funding opportunities and funding news is in there. And also we've compiled a directory that we're going to send out to you today after this session with a copy of the slides. This has lots of links to sources of support and information. So basically, I provide lots of free support to voluntary sector groups in Glasgow for funding and fundraising. So please feel free to contact me. Over to Sally.
Lovely, thanks, June. So yeah, funding and fundraising. You've actually got another member of staff here from GCVS online today. Phil Broadley is here. Phil's our sector development officer, and Phil's real area of expertise is around the governance and charity law side of things. So what do you need to do if you're a charity to keep Oscar happy? What do you need to do if you're an unincorporated group and you think that you're going to take on staff or take on assets? It's really not advisable to stay as an unincorporated group if you're taking on liabilities. These are the sorts of areas that Phil can talk to you about and have a surgery and talk on a one-to-one basis. We do run some governance training, but a lot of this is done on an individual organisational basis because it tends to be quite specific. And it's something important to mention today, because if you're looking to generate income in different ways, it's important to make sure that your governance arrangements support support that. So make sure that you're considering your charitable purposes and the level of trading that's permitted and that sort of thing. So just note that down as a key point for this morning to think about, checking out your governance and arrangements and so on. It doesn't need to be scary. I know it can seem a little bit that way when it's legal matters, but Phil is really there and can help with those sorts of factors. Myself, I run training about measuring the impact of your work. I'm not going to say much about that today, other than most funders are looking for that sort of thing. So if you're thinking of new ways of working, think about how you're going to demonstrate the impact of that afterwards. We have a small team of people that will look after managing people and safety. Some of you might have met Natasha in the past. She's there and particularly useful if you're employing staff, to make sure you're thinking about all of the things like contracts and employment terms and conditions, that type of thing. Pasna mentioned that she's now, after 4 years, got staff, which is fantastic. We're really keen to make sure that if organisations are taking folk on, they know exactly what they're doing and keeping everything in good order, if you like. Planning and crisis management. Sadly, things have been tricky for lots of organisations. Yes, funding's been good in some ways, but a number of organisations we're now seeing a hitting crisis point, and some folk are actually having to close their organisations. We're here to support if you need that, and trying to close down in the most neat and tidy fashion possible. If your organisation gets to that sort of stage where you have to think about that crisis situation, please do act quickly and come and talk to us. Things don't get better if you leave them, but there might be things that you can do to look at that. And we work with people like CEIS and RODI to provide support around business planning and so on as well. Couple of last areas. We work with Glasgow University to try and get some of the research expertise out into the voluntary sector. It's not an area that people are taking us up on very much. I think it's an underused area that we could make more of. There are students in Glasgow Uni that want placements and can provide us with expertise. So we're doing a sort of facilitation there. So if you've got a long-term idea or a project that you're thinking about, but you perhaps haven't got enough time to devote to that real in-depth research, it may be that there's a student within the university that can help with that sort of thing. The one limitation on this is that it works best for things where the project is not time limited, because they can't guarantee when a student might be available to help. It's more of a longer term thing. If you've got an idea that you'd like to do a bit of research around, that's where we can possibly help. And the final area from myself is an area that's actually growing around managing assets. And we've got the member of staff online here again today. Graham, you'll see, is our development officer for empowerment and facilities. And what that means is he's there to help organisations who are either managing assets like community centres or buildings, or they're thinking about taking some on. And you can see that might apply to some of yourselves if you're thinking about generating further income. And within that area, we're already beginning to look at things that Roddy mentioned around what organisations have to do to keep up to date with digital changes. You know, during the pandemic, it was all about getting laptops out to service users, but what about for the future? Do you have resilient infrastructure? Do you know that you're properly backed up? All of those sorts of practical things that we can help with. And also, for me, most exciting at the moment is that we've got a couple of members of staff who are starting to look at what organisations should do around climate impact. So if you're running a community centre, is it insulated? Should you be looking at heat pumps? All of these sorts of things, trying to work ahead and help voluntary sector organisations with their contribution to the ideas of net zero. So I think that's quite a forward-looking piece of work. So hopefully some of the things will have chimed with you as being relevant to yourselves. They're in the slides you'll have when we send them out. June and I, our contact details, and everybody else you can find on our website. So that applies to any organisation, whether you're thinking about enterprising activity or not. I'll hand over to Roddy to fill in the picture about the social enterprise side.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Sally. Just give me a sec, folks, and a second, I will just share my screen again. There we go. So I'm just going to maybe follow on from Sally and talk about a couple of programs, primarily Just Enterprise, which can provide complementary support to some of the strands of support that Sally described that GCVS and partners can deliver. For those of you who are not familiar with Just Enterprise, is national Scottish Government funded support programme for, in the government's language, enterprising third sector organisations. So it is there to support social enterprises and organisations who are aspiring to the social enterprise model. Obviously we're talking about Glasgow, but it's a national programme, so if you're in Shetland or if you're in Gretna, you can access this programme. And as I say, the coverage is national, and to re-emphasise, it's free to access. I'll skip over the first couple of slides quite quickly because I want to get to the relevant areas of support for today's conversation about income generation and income growth. But there are other aspects to the programme. I know Ray from Firstport's on, and I suspect you'll be talking about funding and some of the support around startup. But again, if you are, or you're aware of somebody who's sitting in their bedroom, a bit like Pasna was a while back, thinking about establishing a social enterprise, then the programme is there to provide funded support for that through our partner, Just Firstport. Again, if you're maybe in an organisation and you're looking to develop your leadership role, you don't need to be a chief exec or anything. You can just perhaps part of a management team, or you're new to people responsibility. Again, there's a leadership element there as well that can support you on an individual basis. But it's the last two bullet points that are in bold there that are probably most relevant for today. Again, I'm using the government's language. They spoke about strengthening organisations and growing your organisations, but to some extent the two are interchangeable. And these areas of support are really about practical business support to help your organisations be more sustainable and develop and move forward. And I'll get into the detail of that shortly. In terms of the nature of the support and the way it's delivered, there is one-to-one specialist support. So should you apply, I'll explain how that works shortly, and you're successful, then you can be allocated an individual specialist to help you with the area of business support that you're requiring. Having said all that, there is a workshop programme. Obviously in the last 18 months that's been online, but we are hoping to get back into the classroom at some time in the near future. But there is that group learning environment. Aside from that, we do have some downloadable video tools as well around areas for social enterprise as well that you can access, and we have a small number of other resources as well. But I think for the purposes of today, the primary area of relevant support would be the one-to-one business support programme. And what can that entail? Well, there's actually other things that aren't on this list, but I've just tried to come up with a few things that are particularly relevant for today. Income generation, looking at ideas, testing ideas, developing financial plans around those ideas, all of that sits within the programme. Charitable trading, which Sally touched on in her presentation a short while ago, it's a very, very important area. I suspect many organisations in today's session are charities. It's absolutely fine for a charity to trade, but you need to be aware of certain things. And won't get into the conversation about primary purpose trading and ancillary trading and all those good things, but you do need to understand what you're getting into and make sure that you're not falling foul of either Oscar or potentially HMRC. Other areas of support, I won't go through them all there, but all those areas and many more are there. So again, if you have a particular need, today we're talking about income generation, but for something else that sits around that, it might be cash flow, it might be marketing a new service or promoting it, it might be actually e-commerce to trade online to generate income from that service. All that sits within the scope of the programme. Moving on, I mentioned briefly about charitable trading. Again, you can get support around that area from GCVS. Again, you can access Just Enterprise, but there's actually a lot of good tools out there right now. The screen grab in the bottom right hand corner of the slide there is Oscar's guide as well. It's well written, plain English, free to download as well. So again, I'd recommend if anyone's embarking on this particular journey, have a wee look at that. On the left hand side of the slide as well, that's just a download from SCVO's website. So there are quite a lot of free, easy to access, easy to read, plain English support documents out there as well, that if you're wanting to get background perhaps before you talk to an advisor, again, those are all accessible, and I would recommend them, particularly the Oscar one is very, very good. So I mentioned the support that's available through Just Enterprise. I mentioned the fact that you can access the group learning, whether it be online or hopefully in a classroom in the near future. But the one-to-one support is, because it's government money, there is an application process, there is an approval process. In the vast majority of occasions, applicants are successful for that. The only reason somebody probably wouldn't be successful is if they can't evidence that they are in fact a third sector organisation, or that the support they're looking for is not enterprising in nature. The whole name of the programme, Just Enterprise, is it's about supporting organisations to be more enterprising, to generate other income streams. But the application support process is quite straightforward. You simply go to the website, and that's in the pack that you'll get after the session. You fill in a very short online form. It takes you about 30 seconds to complete. Just basically ask who you are, your contact details, the nature of your inquiry. Somebody will contact you then from one of our team. They will have a slightly more in-depth chat with you and help you complete a sort of one-page application document that then goes for approval. But the person who contacts you is there to support your application. They're not a gatekeeper. They're on your side. And then once it's gone for approval, then you should know within a couple of days whether you've been successful. But just to reiterate, the vast majority of applications are successful. And then once you're through that stage, then you'll be allocated an individual who will be a specialist in the area of support that you were looking for, and they will engage with you and they will work at a pace that suits you. We sometimes have organisations who want to move really quickly, so that engagement can start within the week and might take 3 or 4 days over the course of 2 or 3 weeks. So we have other engagements that take a long time, over weeks and months sometimes. So again, we will generally work at the pace that is right for your organisation, and in a way that's right for your organisation. So where do you find us? Well, we've got the website. I mean, if you just Google Just Enterprise, all one word, it will come up straight away. There's a help desk phone number there as well, and we do all the other stuff like tweeting. So again, if you want to follow us, that's the Twitter handle there as well. But first and foremost, I would encourage you, just give us a phone call or take a second, have a look at the website, click or complete that online form, and one of our guys will get in touch with you and we'll have a conversation and try and steer you to the right avenue of support. And if you're not right for Just Enterprise, and maybe, again, we're in Glasgow, so maybe if the support would be better sit with Sally's team at GCVS, then we would refer you over there. We wouldn't just leave you hanging. So that's me. So I don't know if we've got time for questions or if we're taking them later, Sally.
No, Roddy, we'll take questions. We'll take questions later if that's okay with everybody. There's been a couple of questions in the chat that we're picking up. We're answering some of them as we go along. If we're not answering them there and then, Fran and I are gathering them up so we can make sure we do answer them. We're running tight for time, everybody. So what we wanted now was the opportunity for you to go back out into the breakout rooms and to actually have a chat about some of the challenges that are there for you around becoming more enterprising or generating this alternative income, because we've been telling you a bit about the support available, but we'd really be keen to hear from yourselves as to what you think the challenges are, the barriers are, and also within your group if there's any good ideas of how you've overcome those barriers. I hope everybody is getting a little bit of a chance to have a discussion and come up with some ideas. I was quite excited here when I could see people actually putting things in the Miro board, that it was actually working. So well done to the groups that have done that with the Miro boards. I will say I'll leave them up after the event. If there's other things you want to record in there for a short time, I'll leave it up. And then what we do is freeze it so it's there and set from the event, and we'll share it with everybody if there were useful comments in there. As with all of these things, we're whizzing along with the time-wise. So I wondered if it would be useful just to hear one sort of key idea from each group. Was it a barrier or a thing that you overcame? If I could ask you to do it really quickly from each group, that would be fantastic. So the first group is the group with Jennifer and Douglas in. So could somebody give us a quick idea? Yeah, Jennifer?
Yeah, we were kind of chatting about, actually Rachel, who was in the room, was saying that they are kind of a bit nervous about charging people. But also another issue is people turning up. So kind of, you know, that thought around, should we charge people a deposit to ensure that they turn up? So luckily Douglas was able to offer some really good advice in terms around, you know, not being scared of charging. And we also spoke a wee bit about, you know, there's different ways to do it. You might want to look at a kind of pay it forward type idea, where those who can afford to access your services might want to you know, pay it forward and allow somebody else in the community to access that for free. So yeah, I think a lot of charities in particular who are just looking to start trading, I feel really nervous about possibly charging for services that might have been free before. And Douglas also made a really good point about letting your service users in the community know how much it costs you to deliver that service. So there's all different things that you can do to try and sort of allay your fears, as it were. I hope, Rachel, the kind of the answers that you got in the room were helpful to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I noted them all down, so I was just trying to see if there's anything else. And there was the one that you mentioned as well, was just actually consulting with service users to see what they can afford as well, rather than just picking a number and then actually no one can afford that and they stop coming. So
lovely. Okay, thank you very much to that group. Interesting thoughts already. Graham, the group 2 was with yourself, Graham.
Yes, I think we've maybe had 5 or 6 different points. So I'll need to just pick one and we'll record the other ones. One of the ones we all agreed on initially was just the challenge of actually finding time to develop earned income ideas when you've got your other responsibilities, your day job or whatever else you're doing. And I suppose allied to that as well was the point made us, and identifying the best person or people within the organisation to actually do this. Some of whom, you know, may or may not have those skills, and obviously that's where support's important. So so finding time and identifying the best people to take forward the ideas.
Lovely, thanks, Graham.
Yep.
And yeah, we will record any of the other points that we don't get to. Group 3 was with Roddy.
Hi, Sally. We kind of probably reflected the discussion from the first group as well. We spoke about sometimes the challenges, actually the culture of the organisation. Should we be asking people to pay for this service? And if we are charging a service, then again, how do we set the price point? Which again, I think came up in the other group as well, and that can be quite difficult. And again, there was a discussion about, okay, should we be asking a funder to give us money to deliver the service to the client group, so that it's free to access, but the money's coming from elsewhere as well. So the big thing was around culture. Many organisations seem to find it hard to, it's a big step to say, right, we're now going to start charging to pay for a service, and then coming up with what that price should be once you step over that particular hurdle.
Lovely, thanks, Roddy. And the last group was with Ray, June and Pasna, I think, in that group.
Yeah, we had some really healthy discussions. It was really nice to see things resonating from a personal point of view. But yeah, we were talking about the organisation's internal challenges and internal culture, really, about valuing yourself, trustees valuing the organisation, and valuing the space, for example, that we're hiring out. Yeah, just looking at valuing ourselves and some self-care so that we can remain sustainable. Some really other good points as well, but I think this one was striking. Is that right? Yeah, my group, yeah. That's
Thank
great.
you very much,
Thanks.
folks. That was excellent, really quick feedback. We've picked up one question in the chat where June was actually asking whether Pasna could say something very quickly about her funding mix. how it's worked around enterprise and activity and grant funding, what sort of mix is, just quickly? Is that possible?
Sure. Yeah, sure. I think somebody mentioned about consulting the clients, and from an occupational therapy point of view, everything's person-centered. So that's the conversation I had initially when I had to charge. So we started off with £2, and then because we were bringing in the lunch at the daytime disco, we went over to £5, and I went individually speaking to every single person and asking them about how they felt about that. So that really helped. And in the at the disco, when there's 50 people, there would be about one person who couldn't pay, and that was fine. So most people were happy to pay because they got food. I think food's a big motivator, and they were comparing their sandwich in a high street shop to compare it. They're like, you know what, it would cost me about the same having a sandwich outside the disco. So a sandwich, a hot drink, and a piece of fruit. So that, so our charging is for the disco was that way. In regards to going zip sliding, they obviously had their own costs, so I turned into the negotiator at GoApe, and their normal costs are £40 for doing the full works at GoApe, the big challenge. So we were doing zip slide only. So I managed to get them to reduce the cost to a tenner per head, and then we as an organisation just charged everybody a £5 per head. So it was £15 for them to come along, but that included free transport. They didn't have to pay for the bus hire to get there. So that's how that worked. And that's how other things like speedboating and everything, similar kind of model. Freewheel North, it's a pound to go cycling. So people just paid that themselves. We didn't get anything out of that. And so there's a range of different prices and different levels. In regards to funding forms, just because it has been me and me only for the longest time. I've just done the basic ones, and it's a total bummer when you don't get when you don't get the funding. It really is such a low point that you reach, and it's such a high point when you do get funding. But with the business development person, one of his main focus is to do for those funding forms, to churn them out. But yeah, we do have a diversity of ways of getting money.
Brilliant, Pasna, thank you for that. So actually interesting, Pasna's response reflected some of the things, some of the barriers that you'd already mentioned, and also occurred to me that some of the things that you suggested, finding the right person and the negotiator that can negotiate those things, the person that can think those ideas through for you. So thank you very much, everybody. We've reached the point where we're scheduled to have a break now. So if everybody's okay, we'll stop for 10 minutes and come back at 11:45, if that's okay.
Right, folks, I'll work through this fairly quickly so we've got enough time for the group in questions. There's a programme that we operate called Accelerate. It's something that we have done in the past, and it complements the work that Roddy spoke about in terms of Just Enterprise. So I'll explain that in a wee moment, and it's hopefully just a different perspective on sustainability for third sector organisations. And really what Accelerate is about filling a gap. So we realised a few years ago that, as Roddy said, running the Just Enterprise programme is around supporting social enterprises. So people who are already trading, supporting with their sustainability or issues that are coming up, and organisations that are maybe on the verge of trading. So it's quite a commercial piece of support, talking about pricing and marketing and those kind of things. So people really have to be trading or quite near trading to access that support. We've obviously got Business Gateway supporting more the private sector, including social enterprises, but supporting the bigger sector, very business orientated, and our friends at Firstport that support new entrepreneurs, really supporting single entrepreneurs. And we've heard a wee bit about that this morning. So a couple of years ago, when we had various meetings with the Scottish Government about the gaps in the sector, what was knocking on our door as community enterprise was organisations who are largely community-based, not necessarily small, largely small to medium size, can be quite large though, but organisations who are concerned about their sustainability, their financial sustainability, but really quite far away from trading. So probably don't really have an idea, or maybe have a very fledgling idea. So they're maybe, you know, months or a year or 2 or 3 years from trading perhaps, but really need to think through their sustainability. So they need a particular approach in terms of support. And actually this program was called Enterprise Accelerator first. And we found when we did some research that a lot of the community organisations we were keen to support were just frightened off by the word enterprise and just didn't engage in the program. So we removed that word, and this is, so it's much more gentle, much more about providing mentoring, specific support in some cases, some ideas generation, working with the culture of a board or the culture of a manager potentially, to support people over a longer period of time to move from one place where they are, maybe quite grant dependent or dependent on donations and fundraising, and they're concerned about that, moving towards a much more a mixed portfolio of work. So we're absolutely not saying to people, stop being who you are and turn yourself into a business, but it's about helping people to just diversify that income stream and think through sustainability in lots of different ways. Can include trading, usually does include some thinking around future trading, commercializing what we're doing, some of those discussions we were having around the suggested donations and things, but it could be around things like sponsorship, corporate sponsorship, it could be community shares, it could be all sorts of different things. So it's around the broad feeling around long-term sustainability. So just to give you a feel about who's eligible, so people have to be not trading. So they have to be not trading, and we can maybe have a chat about what that means. So, you know, I don't know, a church approached us last week. They've got a community hall. They do a coffee morning where people chuck some money in the plate once a month on a Saturday morning, and then they have a Christmas pantomime where they charge £5 for the tickets. Well, we're not calling them a commercial trading organisation. So technically, you might say they bring some money in trading, but it's very, very, very low level, and they're really not operating as a commercial entity. So when it says not trading, it would be that kind of very low level trading or not trading at all, and people depending on donations, grants, fundraising, those kind of things. And if we do come across an organisation that's clearly trading, that has a price, is making sales into their sector, into their community, into the marketplace, then we would be transferring them to Just Enterprise. And Roddy and myself will be working very, very closely on this. So if we have somebody who's coming who's clearly a social enterprise, we would refer them into Just Enterprise. And if a referral comes into Just Enterprise that's clearly not trading and nowhere near trading and needs a longer term to nurture that idea, then he'd be referring that into the Accelerate programme. So we'd be working quite closely in terms of not saying no to people, but referring them back and forward. People do need to be based in Scotland. We have had some applicants from English organisations. When I say constituted or pre-constituted, people do have to have a constitution ideally, but we want to leave the door open. So if there's a group of people who've come together and they're not constituted, this can often happen around taking on a local asset, for example, and they don't actually have a constitution yet, then we don't want to close the door to them. So we would maybe take them forward and start helping them to think about becoming incorporated, becoming a SKIO. And, you know, Phil's here from GCVS. This is a Scotland programme, but we would be getting some potential support from TSIs and linking in, very much working in partnership with some of that. But we wouldn't be ineligible if groups are unconstituted. We do want people to be asset locked, so they're reinvesting all their profit back into their community. And when I say committed to change, this is quite a bit of in-depth support, and we want people to be committed to that. And it doesn't have to be financially committed, but time committed to the culture change and a different way of working that this can be. So just some of the services. This is basically, I had somebody I was speaking to yesterday thought, I don't think this is for us because it sounds like quite a firm program. And I said, well, no, it's whatever you want. It's entirely 100% demand led. So whatever people need, we will design an intervention for that. It's not program led. We don't have a pre-arranged program, but it could be ideas generation, could be business planning, could be looking at market research. We have a new digital officer who's been in post for a couple of months. So it's about digitizing a service, about a new CRM system for customer management, for e-commerce, you know, anything like that. So there could be a whole, whatever people need, it could be a whole range of different things. So it's very much needs led rather than us coming saying, here's a program that you can join. It's very, very flexible in terms of the support that people can get. I won't go through all of this. It's on the website. It's really just to say, and this will be circulated, I believe, after today. So you can look at this in your leisure, but really it's about coming onto the scheme. We'll do what we'd call a health check. It's just about getting to know an organisation. It's very informal. And out of that health check, we would work out what the action plan would be to support an organisation. We want to do that combination of providing something specific. So it could be develop an idea, a little business plan, something like that, but also ongoing long-term mentoring. This is a 3-year program, and we're imagining supporting people right through that 3 years. So you might get a bit of support next week, but we want to be keeping in touch with you right through that 3-year program and providing little bits of distant support, some information. So it's a long-term support program where people can dip in and out of bits of support over that period of time and hopefully start to develop different kinds of trading and that sort of culture change looking towards sustainability. So there is an expression of interest. So that's the link there. It's very easy to find on our website. If you click Get Support on Community Enterprises website, it's very easy to find. So click on that expression of interest, similar to what Roddy said about Just Enterprise. It will take about 30 seconds. It's just name, address, what kind of things you need. It will come straight through onto our system. One of our team will get a direct email and somebody will be in touch with you to discuss this in a bit more detail, get to know you a bit more and find out what the need would be. And just lastly, I just wanted to point out that that we will work very much working in partnership with other organisations. So we'll be making referrals to Just Enterprise, as I said, Firstport, to the local third sector interfaces, volunteer centres, whatever it might be, you know, Social Enterprise Academy, if it's learning or training. So we're not going to be the be all and end all. We're very much working in partnership, but then filling that gap and providing that support where it's needed. We just kind of wanted to point out, I just added this in as people were talking today, just pointing out that there is a social enterprise support map. So it's new, we're just beginning to build that. It's not got everybody on it yet, but most of the major players are on there. So if people are looking for support with sustainability and social enterprise, just head along to that. It's secupportmap.scot, put in your details, and it'll tailor a support package for you based on where's the best places. If people are feeling a bit confused about all the thousands and bits of support and funding and policy and information that's out there, that hopefully just gives a wee bit of a guidepost to that. So you'll find that on our website as well. And I think that's me. So I'll stop there because I think questions are coming later.
Thanks very much, Douglas. That was really interesting. I just want to add quickly that when I was still working for the 3 TSIs in the Forth Valley area, I referred a lot into the Accelerate programme and it was absolutely fantastic. So I definitely endorse anybody who's looking for that kind of support to get in touch with Community Enterprise and take that forward. Okay, so now if Ray's ready, we'll hear from Ray from Firstport to tell us about some support and funding programmes that they can offer to people as well. So Ray.
Thank you. I'm going to talk, I think, both generally and a bit more specific, as I like to do. So if I start rambling, Jen, just give us a kick in. Firstport, for those of you who don't know us already, we are a government-funded funder. We deal specifically with startup social enterprises. We have a variety of different funding programs: Start It, Build It, Boost It now, and Launch Me, and we're now dealing partly with the Catalyst Fund. We now have a complete pipeline from idea through to investment, with the support available there too. So the smaller grant funds, the $5 that started is to get social entrepreneurs up and running, right through to Catalyst Fund, which is a loan fund, which we're working with CEIS on. I think if I'm right in thinking this, and do jump in if I'm not, I think a majority of the people here are actually with organisations. So what I'd like to, a vast majority of the kind of funds that we offer probably wouldn't be a good fit. But what I kind of want to open up is the idea of identifying opportunities for sustainable trading, because this is something that happened at startup time, and it can easily be mapped across to where you are now. In fact, you might actually be in a better position than those at startup. Very often when people are starting something up, or where they're looking at trading opportunities, they do tend to be like kids chasing a football around the playground. They're all like, oh, it's over here, let's all go for this. What they don't do is first look inward to the organization and go, actually, what's our value proposition? What are we doing? What do we do well? Where are our skills? Your organization is successful because it's still going. In the wake of a pandemic, congratulations, and possibly one of the hardest times to be running any kind of organization. So you will have values there that will not necessarily be replicated in other organizations. So this is your kind of USP. I think what we've kind of learned over the pandemic is that, you know, donation-based and grant-based income is not particularly sustainable. It's a benefit and can do great work, but it's not something that I think a lot of organizations are now relying on. What we saw over the pandemic was many organizations pivoting, I hate that word, but it's the only word I can think of, pivoting to providing services that were chargeable, whether that's digitally or some other way. And what they've actually done is accidentally diversify their income streams. And what we're actively advising them to do is not jettison them as soon as, you know, it looks like the pandemic's over. What you've got is a whole new income stream that you can actually use to get more money in. I'm aware that there is no panacea. There is no one size fits all for organizations. But there are kind of core things that I think organizations should be looking at when they're looking at sustainable trading. In the social enterprise model, usually we'll really hammer it out. You've got your customers over here and your beneficiaries over here, and never the twain. As Pasna said before, in the social enterprise model, it gets a little squeamish when you're charging beneficiaries, because the point of the beneficiary is that it's either free to access, or the social impact that you're providing is being provided to those most likely to benefit from it, and they may not have the income to pay for it. What this looks like in practice is it's different for every organization. Some organizations will have a kind of pay what you can thing, which is much better than donations in terms of optics. Very often people will pay more than the average if they have it to hand. Though recently that's not necessarily been the case, but one of my awardees has taken the bold step of having suggested prices. Rather than a suggested donation, it's a cafe, so she's basically going, here are the suggested prices for these individual meals, and it has upped every single piece of income that she's getting in. Others are going, right, my beneficiaries are over here, this is where I'm doing all my social impact, my customers are over here, they're basically paying for this. Now, one of the hardest things to do, and this kind of came up in the breakout room, is switch the mindset at both, well, at a board level or a trustee level, that this is not completely the worst thing that's ever going to happen. Charity trustees do tend to come from a place of, we want to help as many people as possible. We want it to be as free for as many people as possible. That's great. But when it comes to trading, or when it comes to even switching a little bit more towards the commercial, the doors start slamming at a trustee level. I had one awardee who is a social enterprise and who was doing a catering thing, and we had a long conversation about how, yeah, you know, I could get a lot of money from, you know, doing catering for these corporates, but I don't really like them and all the rest of it, blah, blah, blah. And I basically told her, look, you can charge them through the nose for this. You don't have to like your customers. As long as they have money, that it's better it's going into your pocket and is then going to your beneficiaries than some other competition. So I don't care if you like them or not. In fact, if you don't like them, even better, it means you're not going to feel guilty about charging them. Something to remember about corporates is they have, you know, CSR, and if you're a charity or a social enterprise, you're effectively helping them tick that box. So you can charge a CSR premium secret CSL premium for your services. Now, in terms of what your services are, your products are, this is where we kind of ask the same questions that we would ask at Startup. So, I mean, you need to kind of come up with a service or a product, and that is kind of down to what the organization does best, where the skill sets are, where the interest is. Around that, it's about kind of finding out if there is a market for it, if there is competition, not just organizations providing similar things, but organizations providing different things that are tapping into the same customer base. So as an example of that, one of the things that we were constantly butting our heads up against was the People Equity Fund, which a lot of social enterprises were going, hey, we're doing this thing, we're going to tap into People Equity Fund, it's going to be great. And do you have any competition? No, nobody's doing our thing. It's like, yes, but other people, other organizations are also tapping into the People Equity Fund for other things. So you need to be aware of that. Pricing structure is always important. As we kind of discussed in that breakout room, the social enterprises and charities tend to undervalue their staff or undervalue themselves in the case of social entrepreneurs. And it is one of the things that I do ram home with people on my caseload, to the point of being quite boring about it, is that if there is no you, there is no enterprise. So you cannot be killing yourself on behalf of your beneficiaries, because if you go, the whole thing goes, there is no social impact. So there needs to be a kind of sense of self-value and self-care. This is very difficult when the services that you're looking to charge for have been provided for free. It's very difficult to kind of make that leap. It's much easier to charge at a higher rate and lower the prices, because then everyone's like, yeah, that's great, that's fantastic. And I think the advice that actually telling your users, your customers, how much it's costing you if they are beneficiaries at the same time is actually, it's good transparency anyway. And I think people are more likely to pay for something if they know that, oh, well, they're only making this much, but the money's going back to this anyway. So there's no problem with it. I think with all income streams, the thing to bear in mind is what is the return on your investment? Any income stream is going to require time, money, whatever to develop it. I'm gonna risk the wrath of the third sector here, but the cafe, the inverted commas community cafe is one we see a lot, and it's one that a lot of charities, if they've got premises, will use as a potential income generator. In almost every single case, and well-fed was mentioned before, but well-fed is the exception, I think, that proves the rule. There is so much time, money, and development involved in getting that off the ground that they very rarely wash their face, never mind make a profit. What Well-Fed did was they went on Just Eat and they did a takeaway service, and that's where a majority of their money's coming from. It's not from premises-based stuff. It's because their customers are out with their beneficiary area, which is Whiteinch, and they're making money hand over fist, hopefully, on that customer base, which is then going back into the beneficiary base. So it's about understanding at a trustee level, and I'm aware that everybody here is, interested in it, but I'm also aware that trustees can be an iceberg. It's making them understand that your income generation is the engine that's going to drive the charity, the organisation going forward. While there have been grants, a lot of grant income over the last 2 years in bits and bobs, that has to come from somewhere. And I think that the thing to understand is that that money being paid out then means probably that there's going to be a dearth of grants going forward. So it's not something that can be relied upon. Donations, obviously, everybody's feeling the pinch. What was it, 18% inflation on food recently? Electricity bills going up. Like, individuals are going to really be struggling to provide that philanthropic gesture. Just as we found with the organisations that were paying it forward, like Social Bite, really struggled after a while because people just didn't have the money to pay it forward. And if there's money out there with corporates and with customers with deep pockets, I'm going to repeat this, it's better in your pocket than it is in some private business's pocket. And that's all I'm going to say about that. I think I'm over, so I'll shut my mouth.
Thanks very much, Ray. That was really, really helpful and informative, and some really good points that you bring up there, particularly around trustees and boards, and how oftentimes it's much more difficult to change board culture than it is the culture of the actual organisation in terms of its operations. So are we taking questions just now, Sally?
No, if we can do the same as we did last time, Jennifer, if that's okay with everybody. Ray timed that perfectly with actually then leading into the next little workshop to talk about how you spot and take advantage of an opportunity. So I was frantically scribbling down when he was talking about knowing what the strengths of your organisation are and thinking about your uniqueness and things. So that was a nice little link to you thinking about a 10-minute discussion in your group to think about how you spot and take advantage of an opportunity. And what we'll do is same as we did last time, if you can come back with 1 point for each group, put any questions in the chat, and we'll see where we can get to with the time, if that's okay with everybody. And it's thanks to Ray and Douglas for their really smart sort of quick input. So thank you for that.
I think Sally must have some connection issues, so maybe we can just round up the responses here. Would that be all right? So we can go to group 1.
Who was in group 1, sorry?
Is that us?
Is that us?
Jennifer. Graham.
I think we were group 2, but that's fine. I'll go ahead. So we talk quite a lot about relationships, that what we all have to offer is we can offer building relationships with others. And we were just teasing out the kind of differences that there might be between the formal being part of formal network sharing and more informal relationship building networks, if you want to call it that. So that was quite an interesting contrast between the two. We maybe felt we might make more time for the formal ones, perhaps because we feel we're part of them, but actually you might end up having some more deeper and more meaningful interaction through the informal networks and relationships that you create.
Thanks, folks. Sorry about that. I don't know if you noticed that I disappeared for a minute. Yep, suddenly you were all there and then you weren't. So apologies about that. I'm back in. And thanks to whoever was picking up. Are we just going through each of the groups again? Yep, lovely. Which is the next group?
I think we might have been group 1.
Yeah.
Oh, hold on, I'll tell you. I'm back. I can see you now. So group 1 was with Douglas's group. So if we can go to Douglas, if you haven't.
Okay, well, I think just fairly briefly, I think probably the common view in our group was that people are just incredibly busy, and it's a lovely idea to work in partnership and network, but just life is very, very busy, and it's hard to prioritize networking. And so we were thinking about making sure, some people were talking about really thinking through what am I going to get out of this networking event. So being a little bit selfish, I suppose, organisationally selfish, and thinking what am I going to get out of this event, and then feeding back to the team what people did get out of that event. So it's really much more proactive and deliberate rather than just turning up at a networking event because it's a nice thing to do.
Yeah, brilliant. Oh, thank you, Douglas. Oh, and hopefully from today, once you get all the feedback, you'll think, yeah, there was lots of stuff that came out of today. Graham's group was group 2, so we've covered that. And we're down to Roddy's group, we're group 3.
Yeah, we had a good discussion, and even within our group, there's a couple of connections made there where there's potential for collaboration in the future. But I think in terms of general points, a very good one was made, and it's specific to today. I mean, can we actually share everyone's email address, assuming everyone's willing to do so as well, just so folk can follow up with other organisations after the event. Point was also made that sometimes you need time to reflect a little bit, that today's been great, but sometimes you need to go back to your desk, and after a couple of days you think, oh, I'm really good to hook up with such and such, and as well. So you do need time to sort of digest what you've learned from these events. But in principle, yeah, these sessions are great for finding partners and potential future partners. So I think that's probably the main points from us.
Yep, and I think the very last group is with Ray. Thanks.
Oh, okay, I'm updating away. Well, we kind of went off on a tangent. So, you know, I don't want to say it's my fault, because it wasn't my fault. We were talking about how organizations can kind of support other organizations in a kind of tangible way. And one of the things that kind of came up was the idea of particularly online marketplaces, which are becoming things that smaller organizations want to be able to do and make for themselves, but there's not always a reason for them to have their own, when they can effectively hop onto a platform that's being used by another social enterprise or another charity. The example I was given was Isle Development in the Islands, which is bringing a whole bunch of cottage industries together, basically one woman, one man, and their dogs, and giving them a space to actually sell their stuff and taking a small commission on that. I think the other thing that we kind of brought up was around space, and obviously expertise. There's a lot that organizations can share with each other that doesn't necessarily have to be tangible, but will help over the longer term build partnerships that will be kind of long standing. Not everything has to be, I think one of the things, and I don't think we kind of talked about this, but I'm just going to chuck this in because, you know, I have the floor. A lot of this can seem transactional. And one of the things I've learned over the last God knows how long being in this is that transactional relationships never last, because it's not the basis for a long-term relationship or a long-term partnership is to go, well, you owe me this now. So I'd kind of bear that in mind. But we had a couple of things that we put on there.
Thank you very much. That's an interesting point to ponder, that long-term relationships are not transactional. Yes, I think they're interesting. Okay, thank you all very much, folks. I see people are beginning to put some comments in the chat about connections, and it was just mentioned there. We're happy to gather and send the email addresses if everybody would want. If you're don't want to do that, that's entirely fine. If you can send Fran just a message in the chat if you're not comfortable to share your email address, because I think with 20 odd of us on the line, it's probably easier if you just let Fran know if you're not happy to do that. Then otherwise we'll share the emails afterwards. Fran will pop an evaluation link in the chat as well, and would be really, really keen as a group of partners that have done this to get your feedback, particularly about the timings and whether the level of content was right and so on for the session. So that would be fantastic. And I'll hand over, I think, to Jennifer just to finish off.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you for everybody for joining us today. I don't know about you guys, but I certainly got quite a lot out of the various sessions, and it was great to connect with everybody. And a particular thank you to our speakers today. So thank you to Pasna from Weekday Wow Factor, GSEN member. Thank you to Douglas Westwater from Community Enterprise, and of course Ray Banks from Firstport. But thank you also to our colleagues at GCVS for doing all the kind of background stuff, and being so great to work with in partnership to get the event up and running and online. And thank you also to Roddy from CEIS for his input today as well. And yeah, I hope everybody got something out of it and that you'll be able to take something away from the day. And if anybody is interested in joining GSEN, then just get in touch.
Thanks, Jennifer. That was a sneaky plug right at 1 o'clock. She must have practiced that for a long time. So well done. Folks, we haven't had a long question and answer session. We've come up to the end of time. If there are questions that we haven't answered, pop them in the chat now and we can get them before you go. Or you can always email us after the event and we can share that with everybody. If not, as Jennifer said, thanks very much, folks.
Thank you. Bye.